We have Katie Cummings from Pink Umbrella Theater Company joining us again. And she has two of their artists, Ash and Clayton, who are going to be interviewed by our Barbara Leigh. And as I have always done, Barbara, I am going to turn it over to you to listen in and let you do your wonderful interviews.
Thanks so much, Jory. Well, welcome to this interview process, Ash, Katie, and Clayton. I'm so curious to know more about you. So let's start off with you telling me a bit. So let's see, who wants to start? Eeny, meeny. How about you, Ash?
Hey, Barbara.
Tell us who you are and how you got involved in this wonderful organization. Were you a child prodigy?
I wish I was a child prodigy, but I'll explain a little more of it.
Cool.
So, hello everyone. My name is Ash, short for Ashley, Ley. I'm 25 and I'm from West Dallas, and I've been doing theater for about 13 years.
Wow.
Well, I would have said 14, but I started a little before I turned 12 with my first show in the community theater. Anyway, how I got introduced to the program with Pink Umbrella is that a month after I graduated from Cardinal Church University, I was looking for something to do within the community, but then a friend of my mother pulled up the name of the Pink Umbrella Theater Community, and they explained that they offer classes, improv, vocal lessons, ensemble courses, and I figured I register for one of them just to get my feet wet, and I actually enjoyed the experience and would do it all over again.
Excellent.
Knowing that I saw friendly faces and learned new things, especially with the American Sign Language, with how to communicate with those in hearing and seeing.
How cool. Well, thank you. So Clayton, can you introduce yourself a bit?
Okay. My name is Clayton Mortal. I am 24 years of age. I first got my start in theater in middle school in 8th grade, about 9 years ago. Yeah, 9 years ago. I played the role of the stage manager in Thornton Wilder's play Our Town,
Wow.
age 14. And that basically resulted in me getting bitten by the acting bug, which drives me to, I guess, be here today doing theater.
Yes. Well, you have a wonderful voice too. That always helps.
Thank you.
Super.
Sorry.
So when did you get involved with Pink Umbrella?
I got involved with Pink Umbrella. I forget when exactly it was, but I do remember that Katie and I first got involved in classes at, I believe it was Plymouth Church in the east side of Milwaukee, nearby UWM. And these were group classes. They were nice, they were lovely. Unfortunately, there were times when it didn't really fit the best for me personally, because I can't really work that well in group settings per se. And so I just kind of took a short little hiatus from Pink Umbrella up until COVID-19 hit us. And I started doing virtual classes, March or April, I believe, with James Fletcher.
Oh, love James. He's great.
James Fletcher with the Shakespearean monologues.
Nice.
And Ali Bonesho, I think her name is, with musical theater. And that was absolutely fantastic experience. It's been lovely working with all those people so far. And now I'm working with, I'm still working with Fletcher on the Shakespeare monologues, and I'm doing musical theater with Ryan, somebody named Ryan. And
Cool.
I am also gonna start doing voiceover lessons with a guy named Mitch. About I think next week is when I start. And
Oh, that's cool.
yeah, so these guys are gonna put my voice to good use, I guess.
Well, that's fantastic. So tell us why you wanted to continue this work. It sounds like it's been a process where you're finding more and more ways in which your gifts can be developed and you can kind of go places with this.
Oh, absolutely. Really, I think the most enthralling aspect about theater and the reason why I keep doing it is because I just love doing it, and it's such a great passion of mine, and it's helped me through some rather difficult patches in my life. It's been one thing that has remained a constant source of happiness and, you know, joy in my life.
Oh.
And yeah, granted, I suffer from a great deal of anxiety, social anxiety, which kind of results in me kind of missing out on some opportunities in the past. But well, I'm trying to work through it now, and also I this provides me with a constant, a very consistent thing in life for me to look forward to. And I would say that, yeah, I would say that although my anxiety kind of limits me in some aspects, it doesn't limit me in every aspect, obviously,
Yes.
but I just love to do it.
Well, that's
I
so
hope that
cool.
answered your question because I was rambling on a little bit.
No,
It's
it's
okay.
great.
That's okay.
How about you, Ash? Why do
I
you
can-
want to continue doing this?
It's been part of my life for over a decade, and I feel it provides like a welcoming atmosphere to welcome new individuals who are just getting their feet wet into theater. I knew there's going to be a lot of new things. Like theater is just like my way of having therapy, except you have it with different people. You do it with a specific task and you talk a lot and it just feels you at ease. And I know there's like a lot of things in theater that I don't know as of yet, but I'm still waiting to come across to it as I proceed on. Because, and that's one song from Hamilton, there's a million things I haven't done, but just you wait. And I feel like this kind of defines why I still want to continue theater.
It's so interesting. You know, when you think about anxiety and you think about the pressures of being in theater and remembering lines and remembering to do all the, it seems like it would increase anxiety. And yet there seems to be something kind of magical connection that happens when you kind of lose yourself and kind of go in that flow, and suddenly you kind of disappear and the character appears and wow. So Katie, why did you start this company? It sounds like it's very magical for the people involved. How about you? How are you feeling these days about what you're doing?
Magic is definitely one way to describe what's happening, even through the computer screens, right? While we went virtual, as Clayton mentioned, back in March. And, the theater was really created out of this desire. I worked for another company here in town, and we had a program there for individuals on the autism spectrum and other developmental differences, and they grew up and needed a place to go. So 2 years ago, and we just turned 2 in September of 2020. We started in 2018, and we've had over 70 individuals ages 4 through adult take classes with us since we started. So Clayton and Ash actually were 2 of our very first students in our adult ensemble classes last summer. And you know, we really wanted to create a space to make sure that all people who identify with a disability felt that they had a place to share their stories, share their talents, you know, and really come together, as Ash mentioned, as a community, right? Like every class is unique. Every show that we do as theater artists is unique. And it does feel like therapy a little bit. I would agree with her, right? Like you're coming together and sharing your thoughts and ideas. And our hope is to always be here in the city of Milwaukee to provide a platform for disabled actors and artists to change the narrative, right? And show what theater looks like with a unique perspective, with our unique perspectives. So that's really where we started and kind of where we're heading.
Excellent. So I'm hoping that this will kind of serve as a platform too to get other people involved. So how would people get involved with Pink Umbrella? And any more reasons why they should?
Sure. So I'll kind of talk about how to get involved. If Ash and Clayton, if you guys can chime in with why you think people should take. So right now we are virtual. We've had students this summer from coast to coast. We had students in California all the way to Boston.
Wow.
So people can take classes. We've got one-to-one sessions. We have free classes in the evenings. We've got ensemble classes happening throughout the year. And I think we're always going to continue to have an online platform, even when we're able to gather back together in person, because it does work for individuals with maybe some sensory sensitivities or individuals who have transportation barriers, right? Like this is it's a really great platform to continue, you know, to work. And our website has all of our information. So that's the best, you know, that's the best route to go. We're on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, and we're constantly announcing like what's coming up next. And then eventually in 2021, we will have performances, and those notices will go out for auditions. And we'll do performances via Zoom. That's our plan for after the new year. But Ash, maybe you can start with a couple of reasons why you think people should take classes, and then Clayton maybe follow up.
All right. The reason I think others should get involved with Pink Umbrella, because like, again, this is like a welcoming environment, and like the attention is basically on everybody, divided equally, if not more. And you have like time to learn on new techniques and new tasks, learn about the history of each play content that comes by. It provides a lot of courses that you don't even see in a traditional theater program. Like there's the super villains and the superhero courses. I'm currently taking the super villain courses, and it is so evil.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah, I'm having a blast, and I can promise those courses that Pink Umbrella provides will be amazing, and you'll have a great time, and you might want to encourage other people to join up because of how you were able to experience it.
Super. Thank you. Clayton, what do you think?
Well, I personally would say, I mean, Pink Umbrella has provided me with a lot of great experiences. I mean, having actors like Lee Ernst and, you know, I forget a bunch of other people, but they've all come in to show up for the Shakespearean classes that Fletcher has to offer. And I mean, if you are in fact a disabled person and you really don't feel like you want to have a sense of purpose, if you feel like you have it within you and you really want to try this, I say go for it. I say go to Pink Umbrella and see what classes they have to offer and get in what you can get in, because I believe that really if your heart and your mind is in it, you should be able to do it, regardless of, whatever kind of obstacles there may be.
Oh, thank you so much. I think, well, as a theater artist myself, I can totally testify to the amazing way that it takes us out of ourselves and into another world and a way to understand other people. Are there any particular stories that any of you have that were kind of galvanizing for you, that suddenly you went, aha, this is really what I want to do? How about
I
you?
have one if Ash doesn't have one.
Okay.
If you're ready, you can go first, Clayton.
Are you sure?
I'm sure.
Okay. So, well, there are like a couple of stories I could bring up,
Cool.
but just very quickly, there was one story I wanted to bring up really quickly now that I mentioned it, about Lee Ernst, who is a prominent actor in the Milwaukee Repertory Theater. Also, Brian Manny, who Fletcher also had with us, joining us. They both were really complimentary about how I delivered monologues for them and how I, was able to get that across to them. And Brian Manny actually was playing the role of Falstaff in The Merry Wives of Windsor in the last production that the Folger Theater in Washington, D.C. held
Wow.
before COVID hit that area. And he said something to me that I will never forget. He said, boy, after hearing you play the role of, or read that monologue, I wish I'd have heard you do it before I went to DC. And
Wow,
that really was like, wow, I can't believe he just said that. And
wonderful.
there is another one that I had in mind. It's a
Yes.
little longer, but I just wanted to get the first one out of the way because I love that so much.
Go
And,
for it.
and okay, so this next story, so the first play I was ever in was Our Town, as I had mentioned. I was playing the stage manager, 8th grade, age 14. And about 8 years after that, in 2019, New Berlin West, which is the school I went to, they did that production again, this time with the high schoolers. And I went to go see it because I was like, hey, this might be a little throwback for me, a little bit of nostalgia coming in. And I decided that I would give a special gift to the person who was playing the stage manager 8 years on. And so I went to go see it. I sat near the front row just so I could see and hear what was going on. And the actor who played the stage manager did a fantastic job. Probably even better than me, honestly. It's my first time anyway. And after the show, I stood up and applauded, gave him a standing ovation just to show my appreciation and support for the same theater company or theater group that basically gave me the initiative to do this and to turn my life into what it is today. And after the show ended, I met with the actor who played the stage manager, and I gave her the gift that I was planning to give, which is, so I bought a black fedora that I wore on stage, specifically for this role, actually. And I said to her, this is the hat that I wore while playing the stage manager 8 years ago, and I want you to have it. And she said, can I give you a hug? And so she did. And she later came to Mrs. Smith, who was directing the production in 2019 and also did the one in 2011, and who has also been a huge mentor to me, at least in the early years and beyond, and who's still one of my biggest cheerleaders today, I could say. She said that the actor came to me with tears in her eyes, just crying over how that gift was. And it was definitely an emotional experience, and definitely one I won't forget.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you so much. That's wonderful.
I almost didn't want to talk about it because I felt like that would be puffing myself up a little bit too much or being too facetious or whatever, but
No,
that was just a story I thought of.
well, what I love too is that it shows the kind of generous spirit that can be fostered by theater. The fact that you would give her a gift means that you weren't hanging on to your own, ability to do that part. You were saying, hey, there's talent out there that I want to help support. And that's
Yeah.
just such a powerful thing. Thank
Mhm.
you for that. Really
No
appreciate
problem.
it. Ash, do you have a story for us?
I do have one, and this is based on like the challenges that I have faced as a performer myself. And this is like a 2-month span of how it all went down. So like I knew back at 2016, the school I was attending was doing the production of Godspell, and they were having auditions. But there was a week prior to that, and this was like the news that hit me hard. Like my father passed away from cardiac arrest, and I spent like the week crying, and I'm just kind of debating on like I don't know if I wanted to do this audition because I'm still not over my dad's passing, and I was just kind of like sucking up all the courage that I have and just did my piece for my audition. And I'm just glad I was able to pull it together during the process. And when I got into the show, I was just like over the moon. And I was like, I didn't know that this emotional breakdown of my grieving could suddenly get me into a cast list, not only as a person in the ensemble, but with a solo at the end of the first act.
Wow.
And offering me more opportunities. And I'm like, I'm suddenly speechless right now. And as time went on, I fast forward to Tech Week of Godspell. This really hit hard because this is also the same time of the 2016 elections, and everybody was just losing it.
Mm.
It's just like everybody's stressed, everybody's angry, but our directors told us to like, don't let that get into you. But I'm just like, I cannot do this like anymore. But then I had some friends that were also in the show that did tell me to like, everything's gonna be fine, you're gonna do great. And those words of affirmation just kind of kept me going as a performer. I mean, this is the time frame and event that changed the definition of how I perform, not just standing there in lights and smiles and all the time, but it's just real adrenaline that you feel as a performer and as a character, that I forward this message to my future performances to this day.
Wow. That's so cool. And I think it shows too how being able to be part of a cast, everybody working together is so powerful. It's such a way of feeling like you're not alone, and you really are not. You're really part of something that's so creative and that's going to carry you forward. And that's such an important part of what we're trying to do with this next election and with this country. It's like if everybody could just take theater courses.
I mean, it's not just that. Like, also in between, I took a course called Voice and Movement, and it teaches us like how to do like warm-ups properly to be able to reflect, and exercises. And then there's some exercises that can cause an emotional trigger, which is kind of a healthy way of venting. And this is oddly enough the same time that I was going through some struggles.
Yes.
And that changed me.
Thank you so much. This has just been so powerful. And thank you, Katie, for getting us all together and for doing this wonderful work.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
This is great. Thank you, Jory, for bringing all of us together with everyone in. I really hope that everyone joins us tomorrow and gets to see you all. It's just been so inspiring to meet you and hear your stories and about your lives. Thank you. It's been great.
So we have Katie Cummings from Pink Umbrella Theater Company. We have Megan from Ex Fabula. Rosemary Pearson is joining us with Donna, Lexa Art Centers, and Alyson, Chavez. If you've seen any of our videos, if seen any interviews, you may have seen Alyson already or watch later. I'm not sure when I'm going to have this run. So. All right, so we're going to talk about expressive arts. Katie?
Sure. So Pink Umbrella Theater Company was founded in September of 2018. We just turned 2, and we are a theater company providing a platform for disabled actors and artists to share their talents and stories.
Megan.
Yeah, I'm with Ex Fabula. Our mission is connecting Milwaukee through real stories. So we hold story slams, workshops where any community member can tell a story. So of course, along with any community member, that would include people with disabilities. And we've done a couple special projects to help eliminate some of the barriers that folks with disabilities face.
Awesome. So then Rosemary.
Donna Lexa Art Centers is 35 years old and was founded by Donna Lexa, an art therapist. And we serve our community in Milwaukee, Waukesha areas out of 2 studios. And then we also go out to about a dozen different outreach centers. We focus on doing art for many different reasons for those with disabilities. We do adaptive art, delivery of art directives, as well as using adaptive tools. I know Jory's been wanting to get his hands on our paint catapults.
I'm missing out on
Let
that.
him do that yet. Most of our students come to Donna Lexa because they either want to improve their art skills, they already identify themselves as an artist and have a voice that they want to share, and we help them to build a body of work and show that work to the world, and also just for the therapeutic benefit. So it is both life enrichment as well as just a therapeutic benefit.
Very cool. Alyson.
Yes, I'm Alyson Chavez. I'm the Director of Community Engagement at Milwaukee Ballet. You'll hear a lot throughout the conference, I think, about our Tour de Force program, which is a program for kids with disabilities where we put kids, physical therapists, and dancers in a studio together and create a ballet class experience for these kids and families. But we also, maybe something I could talk more about today, we also do sensory-friendly performances for people with autism and other sensory processing disorders. And we do collaborative events and activities and projects, one of which we did with Donna Lexa last year, and it was awesome. We also will take our workshops out to different centers like curative care, or we've done programs with Goodwill. So we can adapt any of our workshops to programs and community centers. And really our goal is to just, at least through the community engagement programs, is to just bring the joy and beauty and fun of ballet to life for whoever our audience is, whether they're brand new to ballet or they're a longtime ballet who just wants to dig even deeper.
Many of us have stories of times where we've been seeing the powerful benefits of art at work in our programs. Certainly all of you, I cannot imagine what you get to experience. It's gotta be cool. But can we go around and tell us about one example? And we're gonna go backwards. Alyson?
Oh gosh, I could take 100 examples, but let me share a little bit about something that I saw in our first year of doing our sensory friendly performance of the Nutcracker. This experience gives people a safe way to come see the Nutcracker in a way they haven't been able to before. So we make some adaptations to the performance. We take out some of the, the explosions and some of the louder noises. We use recorded music. We keep the house lights at half and the doors open. It would be perfect for the pandemic because everyone's sort of socially distanced in the theater and they can sit wherever they want. It's open seating. They can bring in their tablets and fidgets, and even we've had some therapy dogs in the audience before, which is an amazing thing. So we have people come into a situation where they feel comfortable watching the show, and if they need to get up and move around or make noise or whatever, it's totally fine. We have a quiet zone where people can go relax if they need to. Before the show, we have them come to a meet and greet where they get to meet all the characters so that they can see, before they're going to be confronted with it in the audience, what the jacks who have clown makeup on look like, what the rats with the big, huge rat heads look like. They can see it up close and know that it's not too scary. What's been amazing about this experience is I had a family tell me that this was the first time their son could ever come see the Nutcracker because they had tried before. A lot of these families had heartbreaking stories about getting asked to leave the theater because their kids, or these are a lot of adults too, they make noises, they respond in louder ways than is acceptable in the theater, and they've been asked to leave the theater, which is, I'm sure, incredibly traumatic, I should say. And so one family told me that their daughter had been in the Nutcracker every year from 9 years old through high school, and her brother had never been able to come see it. He knew the music, he knew the story, and he had never had that experience. He finally got to come. She wasn't in it, but he was singing along. He was just cheering with joy. I mean, everyone should have that experience. And that's the point of, I think, all of the programs that we do, is that if you want to take a ballet class, like every little girl wants to, and we do it for boys, you should be able to. If you want to come to the Nutcracker, like everyone wants to during the holidays, you should be able to. So that story really resonated with me.
Okay, so Rosemary, we're going to go to a different type of expressive arts. So what is an example of what, something you've seen that has made an impact?
It's very hard for me to try and focus on one story. I'm going to talk first just a few minutes generally about the art centers themselves. The experience that I see every day in and out is all of the students coming in, and our students range in age from about 16 well into their 80s. So we have students in a studio session together that are of varying ages, varying abilities, varying needs, and they come together as a community. So the greatest joy that I get is from seeing everyone come together and support one another and be friends. I know who had babies. I know who's getting married. I know bowling scores. I know travels that have been made. I know how many languages our students can speak. And when we are missing someone, we're truly missing them. If someone's not in on any given day, I miss that family member. I want to know when they're going to be back and what's up. And that's the way all of our students come together. They just form a community family together that is supportive. And it's what I love the best about what I get to view and see and be part of. And the other thing that has really touched me this past year is we've had a couple of students that have been on the autism and Asperger's spectrum that had real difficulty adjusting to other group environments. And they've been able to come to the center, and part of our intake process and talking with people who want to join the center is to learn what their needs are. and make sure that we're focusing on those every time they're there, and focusing on them as they adjust and change and develop over time. And in this case, we have 2 students in particular that were not able to attend any other type of community service because of their particular needs. And when they came to Donna Lexa, one in particular was nonverbal when she started and was unable to have questions asked of her. And so we began by writing on a whiteboard back and forth, you know, so I'd write good morning with a smiley face and she'd write back, who is now not just fully verbal, but sitting and having conversation at a table with others in the room. And that's the world to me. Just being able to see that progress. I have goosebumps right now thinking of, you know, that kind of difference that a community where one is accepted and can have adaptations made appropriately and just bring them along and scaffold skills. That's the world.
Wow. Okay. Megan, you get to follow up on that one, but
Yeah.
Ex Fabula brings something so completely different. So, you know, what is some benefits that you've seen from Ex Fabula?
Well, yeah, just to build on the things that have been said, not only is it amazing for the individuals with disabilities that are, you know, having these growth opportunities, but honestly, I feel like the community as a whole does have a chance to learn.
Yes.
We've done a couple projects. The first big one was equal access, and we ended up doing, we hold our events in coffee shops, in bars. Well, when we meet in person, we do, around the city. And we did accessibility walkthroughs of all of our spaces. And honestly, as we did these walkthroughs, I think, you know, they always say, like, when you put in curb cuts, not only does it benefit people who are using wheelchairs, but it's also great for people who have young children and use strollers. And we definitely saw lots of examples of that. One of the most recent ones, we did a project with the deaf community. And I will say, the deaf community considers itself a language and culture group and not necessarily a group with a disability, although many people in the group identify as both. So in this case, we've done 2 years of work with the deaf community where we had deaf community members being part of a group to teach storytelling workshops and then do a story slam, all completely in ASL. And it has been a huge learning experience. I have all of a sudden thought about visual accessibility in ways that I never did before. But I think one of the coolest things was, you know, we've been doing this work with the deaf community, and then, you know, COVID hits and we start doing a bunch of programming online. And we're trying to figure out, how can we have someone telling a story and everyone has their audio off, so we're not disturbing them. But then at the end, we want to applause and like recognize them and feel connected, be able to see each other. Well, pretty soon somebody was like, oh, well, we should just clap the way they do in the deaf community. So we switch up the camera, we turn all the cameras, you know, we have everybody with their camera on. We just, from Ex Fabula standpoint, we just switched our view so that everybody could see each other and everybody was clapping visually. And I'm like, look at that. You know, here's something that originally, you know, belongs to one group, and we're able to take something that's kind of an accommodation and it ends up helping everyone. So I don't know how many times we've had those little exercises in creativity, but whenever we're asked to provide an accommodation, it's kind of this cool little challenge. And afterward, I'm like, oh, I learned this cool thing. Now can I spread the news to other people? So I don't know, it is some extra work to coordinate, but it's honestly a great practice as a creative person.
Very cool. All right, Katie, you're next. And I don't know if I should let you talk about Dawn Green and the rubber sword.
That certainly was a moment.
I still love that story.
Sure. So we started teaching. We started teaching theater, right? Like that's our core, and that's what we do. So musical theater, improv, Shakespeare, acting, all of those core classes is where we start, and we focus a lot on social growth and emotional recognition and expression in our classrooms as well. And yes, so Jory and I have a dear friend in common who also takes classes, Dawn. We were in the middle of a a Shakespeare scene where there's a fight, and Dawn uses a chair and has some limited mobility, and she right away was like, I can't do this. And we were like, yes, you can. Like, we just need to adapt it, and we did, and it was great. And she was zooming around the room with her imaginary sword, like chasing all the other students around the room, and it was hysterical, right? And her character was some of the comedic relief in that scene. But we too are virtual right now, along with everybody else. And what I'll tell you is the one story that like strikes me right now is one of our students, when we're in person, struggles with stage fright, just terrible. And she has a really hard time. Like, she knows all of her lines, she knows her songs, she knows her solos, but when we're in person, it is terrifying to her. And she does it eventually, but it takes a long time for her to get there, to get to that spotlight center stage. Well, in this platform, I received a text from her mother in all caps one day, and it said she just volunteered to sing a solo. And I like immediately, love and sobbing emojis back to the mom, and the mom was like doing the same, so this environment that we're currently in, to Megan's point, right, like we're finding those access things that help, that I think are going to translate once we're back in person, and hopefully, we will continue to do this online platform. But that was a huge moment for us, where we were like, she feels safe and comfortable in her own environment, and she's raising her hand first in class. Like, you just can't ask for anything more than that. So so that's my favorite story in the past 6 months to share.
It's awesome. So now the next question is, what are some barriers to arts access that you've seen in your work?
Oh my gosh, we did a project. I'm jumping in because since Rosemary's here, Rosemary and I met at a talk at Alverno College about programs, sort of art therapy programs. And we just started brainstorming about what can we do together? What can we do together? To your point, Shori, that people often don't know about each other until they meet, and then some magic happens. But we did a great collaboration with Donna, Lexa, where their students created art inspired by our Ballet Russe Reimagined piece that we did last year. And, every time I work with a new community, I just learn so many things that, like, had I never ventured into that community, I just wouldn't know. And it really opens up my eyes to how much work we have to do. But we had this plan to bring the students to our studio to watch rehearsal, and then later go to the theater where their art would be displayed. I had no idea how hard the just transportation issue for these people is. I mean, it was shocking to me, just trying to figure out how to get 2 small groups of people, one from West Milwaukee, one from Waukesha, to our space in the 3rd Ward. I thought, easy, I'll call and order a bus and that'll be that. This was the biggest challenge of our program. All the other stuff was fine, figuring out how to do the art, display the art, get the art part was easy. It was just the literal getting them to our space and to the theater, and making sure that it was a safe way for them to get across the city. I mean, this blew my mind, and that's something that I think we have to really figure out. Probably not just in Wisconsin, probably everywhere.
Yep.
And transportation, to echo what Alyson is saying, it truly was difficult for this project, but it's difficult on a daily basis for our students to get to what they want to get to and what they need to get to. Right. As I described earlier, how integral the community was in our everyday lives, my everyday life, all of our students' everyday lives. And when they can't get there, a lot of our students see coming to Donna Lexa as their job. I mean, that's what they do. And so when they can't get to their job and they can't get to their community, they're truly isolated and left out. Even if they're at home with others or they're in a group home, they're feeling isolated and left out. We have daily difficulty with transportation, getting the student to their session on time, picking them up on time. We often we have 2-hour sessions, and they sometimes come 15 minutes before session is supposed to end. And they're really missing out.
Yeah.
They're missing out on life because they can't get to it.
If I can add to that, yeah, we definitely have seen a similar theme. And in fact, sometimes in a workshop, we've had a lot of folks talking about transportation. And our thing then was, yes, can we tell those stories? Because what if we could actually change the policies? What if we could, also how can we provide accommodations? So we got to the point where we were saying, okay, normally we would open up a space like half an hour before a workshop. But in this case, we think we need to have someone on site like at least an hour ahead of time. And we need to also communicate like, yeah, feel free to show up anytime here, feel free to leave early. So it's definitely required some flexibility on our part. But, and change doesn't happen quickly, but we're still hoping that by making sure that we're removing barriers wherever possible, that we can amplify these stories, and that can lead to the barriers maybe being removed. These are all giant problems, but I don't know, like I said before, it is this exercise in creativity. Just one other kind of related thing. We've had people say, oh, well, surely you can't have a nonverbal person be a storyteller. And in those cases, it's always been a question of, okay, no, how can we do it? So, I mean, we have had a nonverbal person be a storyteller. We had to make sure that individual got to kind of help design the solution. And, along the way, I feel like it is this iterative process, right? Where we address a barrier and then we become part of a larger conversation about how do we remove that barrier. If you don't do the work though on your own organization, especially if you are a more able-bodied person, you can't just kind of sprinkle in a little bit of inclusion or a little bit of accessibility. It's kind of the deeper you go in, the deeper you realize you have to go.
Katie?
Yeah, I don't have much more to add. I mean, I would agree with everything that everybody has already said. Transportation is an issue. I've had phone calls too of like, my student or my child is, or I am, is that enough? Or is it okay if I join, right? Like, and then to Megan's point, right? We've had several people say, well, my child is nonverbal. And I say 95% of acting is nonverbal, right? Like, come on in, we got that other 5%, we'll figure that out. Like, that's not a problem. So sometimes the barrier is within, right? And to people who have not had access to anything like this for so long. I had a mom tell me, I have a 35-year-old student, and the mom said the last time she was on stage was when she was 18 in school. There's no place for her, to be. So she's been performing for us. So I'm so grateful that she can be here, right? So sometimes it's just about providing the space and getting over whatever internal barriers you have too.
Katie, you mentioned something, and Megan, you as well, that made me think about how wonderful it is to have an opportunity to flip the paradigm. You mentioned that, some are nonverbal and you have 5% of the people who are verbal. Well, how wonderful to be able to flip that paradigm and make the verbal people the minority of the group so that they're learning how to live with others. I mean, that's really part of this whole process, is not just self-expressive, but just adaptability and learning to live with everyone and communicate in different ways.
Yeah, Rosemary, that's a great point. We, in one of our Tour de Force classes, the glissade class, this is a class for middle and high school age girls who are all in wheelchairs. And when we were designing this class, I mentioned this in our other talk about Tour de Force, but Damian Buckman helped us to get a sports wheelchair, an adaptive wheelchair for the class, because he and the parents were like, the teacher should be in a chair as well. Our teacher is one of our professional dancers, and what a great what a great exchange that class has become, where Itzel or whoever the dancer is sitting in the wheelchair and asking the girls, how do you move quickly in this thing? How do you turn fast? Then once she learns how, because the girls are teaching her, then she can apply ballet technique to that. So now she knows how to turn, but now they're learning how to spot. So they're learning from each other. And that like equal playing field is so helpful for the whole class because, you know, she's not perfect in the chair. And it gives the girls a chance to show off what they know.
If
That
I
is-
can
I like
add
that.
another example of that,
Please.
yeah. When we had a nonverbal teller, the way we ended up working out was that he worked with his support person to write out his story. We had this gentleman, Steve helped pick who was going to voice it for him, and we had someone voicing off stage. And one of the things that was amazing was, you know, in storytelling, oftentimes we talk about how you show detail or emotion. And it was so cool to see how Steve would do that. One of the smartest things, when he was talking about different characters, he was telling a story from when he was younger. And he was indicating like the height of each person when talking about them. And that always just paints such a picture of like, oh yeah, how little were you? Who was everyone involved? So just to see the way that he was doing that, they say that a lot of art is about subtraction. So it's fun to see, like, I think anyone could look at that and go, oh, that's actually a really good idea. You don't need to say, instead of saying how old someone was, you can just kind of indicate, you know, oh, my sister Lisa, and put your hand out. And that's a really quick shortcut. So yeah, no, and so I love this, the flipping of the roles. And even I will say, even when it's not flipping, but we do have one person who is one of our storytelling coaches who has a disability, but even within the community, there's so many different kinds of disabilities that just to see all the different nuances where we find things that are very different, but they are also the same. There's so much learning that can happen, and we move away from this idea of disability and not to more of this, how are we all functioning in our own creative ways? And that's what I just love to see.
Yeah, if I could do anything, I would want to take the tolerance that I see and experience at our art centers out into the community streets. I'm sure that there's some of it that's there, but I love how no one makes anything of the fact that this person needs to self-regulate by getting up when she needs to and walking around the table several times to dispel energy and then can sit down and work again. That person needs to, as Alyson mentioned earlier, needs to shout something out or you know, needs to count something several times or whatever it is. And everybody is just functioning as they are able to function. And everyone else is thinking nothing of it. I mean, that's the world, you know.
Isn't it funny? Even in this group, people are wearing glasses. No one ever points that out as an accommodation, but like these things are all around us. No big deal.
Yeah.
And I try not to squirm in my chair because my chairs are the kryptonite to me because there's so much I can do, but boy, chairs can just take me out.
But if that's what you need to do, I also like the idea of giving ourselves permission.
That has been a big learning curve for me. That's a whole nother story. So one thing I wanted to touch on, because as I was listening and then things come out to me, and back when Katie, we did the radio program, and so many times I was kind of like doing all these other things, but I was still listening in. We talked about transportation. We talked about getting people to places, and I keep looking at everything we have going on right now. We know what it is, and the changes people have made to go to virtual. So our event is virtual, and some might look and say, well, you only ended up with a virtual event. It's like, you kidding me? We're a virtual event. We're around the world now, baby. This is like awesome. So, but now going forward, when life becomes whatever it's going to become, I think that we're developing some incredible tools, because this is one of the things we are looking to address as we continue with Hope Instilled and Hope Against Pain, because we have these programs here where this group here, you're in Greater Milwaukee or in Waukesha, But what about the person who is, say, in northern Wisconsin, who would really love to be able to be on a stage and perform? They have no other way of finding out about it, much less participating. What about somebody else who might be in the middle of a cornfield in Iowa, you know, let's see, Radar O'Reilly in Iowa, and he's like, you know, hey, I really like what that Ex Fabula, but that's where we have now built a strength in having to act, wow, this is just like really comes together, having to come down, see what it's like being in a wheelchair, see what it's like being not able to, and how can we become able to reach them and really make inclusion a word that I will actually like to hear, because sometimes it's not really inclusion, it's kind of partial. But so what advice would you give to aspiring artists with disabilities? Whoever would like to start, let you just kind of go at this.
I'm going to quote Nike, just do it. There's no reason not to, just do it. Come find us, we'll help if you want it.
Megan?
Yeah, I think finding, you know, just the awareness, what you're talking about, if we can build the awareness that the programs exist, there are a lot more things going on than people know. You know, I'm in the dance world and know so much about ballet companies all over the world, but only in the last 2 years have I learned about, you know, professional companies that have integrated dancers. So some in chairs, some with, you know, just a variety of abilities in a professional company. And I didn't know about that and just learned about it to be able to share that with our students. I think that awareness has to happen. We have to also, you know, just start making this more normal that we're all together. You know, one of the biggest things I've learned in working in the program is that it's okay to ask questions instead of just being scared and never dealing with it. I've learned so much from the parents that are like, hey, you're not thinking about this in the right way. So we love what you're doing, but can you remember that we've got to have an easier way for that door to open or whatever it is. You know, if we are all so afraid to even ask questions, I mean, people want to talk about it. They want to tell you ways to help them. They want to have that connection just like we do. You know, we all love talking about the things that we love. So I think that's, we just have to find ways to make sure that people know these things exist, and it's growing every day, whether it's sensory performances or ballet classes for kids all over the country are starting to happen, or, you know, theater, art, everything. It's just that we don't know about it and we're not placing as much focus on it. You know, and we really just need to start making this more of a big deal, I think. So I think it's great what you're doing and what we're all able to, I mean, today I've learned about new things that, like, sometimes I think we all get in our own little worlds where, like, all I know about is what Milwaukee Ballet is doing, but I'm excited to learn that there's a lot more happening.
You know, if I were going to, I frankly, I don't think I would give advice. I think I would just say, please let me know what we can question together. Like, please let me know what are the assumptions that exist, and let's find a way around them. Because frankly, I don't know, as a person who is relatively able-bodied, like, it's really not my place to say what things should look like. It's really my job to listen and to react to whatever requests we get. And honestly, that goes not just for people with disabilities. That's just how we operate in general. We operate off of people saying what they need, and then we react to it. So yeah, I guess if maybe I would say, if you've been in a world where you feel like people haven't listened to you in the past, know that we're eager to co-create something new together.
I think the only thing that I would add is that representation matters, right? So the more we are able to work together and see one another on stage or in art galleries or dancing, right? Or telling our stories, the more representation that's out there, and the younger generation is going to grow up to want to do, to create, to build their own theater companies, their own art galleries, their own storytelling places, right? I think as long as we can continue to elevate and amplify the voices of the disabled, you know, artists and actors and designers and creators, the better off this world is going to be now and in the future.